Okay, so let's dive right into the course. The agenda for today is going to be like basically just touching upon the basics of machine learning. So first, I will be going over what is machine learning, how it is being used across industry right now, and how it is actually changing the world around you. Like whatever product that you are using right now would be like I can say that with 85% confidence that most of them will be powered by machine learning. That's why it is a really fascinating hot topic these days, and that's why it's really important to know like what it is exactly. And then I would go on to some terminologies. So this world of machine learning and data science is the broader term. So this world is completely filled with a lot of different kinds of jargon terminologies. We just use different words for different things. So I'll just go over the basic jargon that I'll be using over and over again. And then third is different types of machine learning tasks I would like to cover. So there are different types of questions that machine learning can answer. So I will go a bit into like what are those kinds of questions and how you can actually use different kinds of algorithms in different areas. Then fourth is the more fun part of this course. This is actually training a machine learning model to predict house prices. So I've taken a data set of all the houses that got sold in a particular area, and it will be really fun to predict the house price of a completely unknown house. So I hope you guys are really excited about this right now because like this will actually help you see like how the machine can learn on itself and become intelligent and predict the unknown. And the last part is something that is extremely important in the industry. If you ask me, it's actually really easy to train a model, but what is even more valuable is to actually interpret the results and create a strategy around it by interpreting the results. So that's why I'll just touch upon the basics of interpretation for the machine learning model. And right now, I've tried to keep this course as low on maths as possible, mathematics as possible. But you need to it's just that machine learning in itself is a very mathematically heavy domain. So in a longer version of this course, we will go into the depths of the mathematics as well, and also in the depths of the coding. So right now, I'm just using off the shelf algorithms. So I'll come to that, but it's just that I just want to give you the intuition of machine learning more than the maths part of it. Okay, so let's dive right in. So, do you guys have any questions? Just post it on the chat. All right, so let's move on. So, what is machine learning? What do you guys think is machine learning? So, have you guys ever heard of it, or have you guys ever come across something like this, or like have you guys ever dealt with machine learning in the past? Okay, so I am seeing that some people are aware of it, some people are not. So completely new topic, only heard about it. Okay, got it. I took the temperature of this room. Okay, so let's go back to I'll explain like what machine learning is, but I would like to first tell you like how it is actually different from traditional programming. So what happens in the case of traditional programming? So what we do is that we have a set of data. So let's say, yeah. So data set. Let's say I have data 2 comma 2, and I have some kind of program associated with it. So let's say I want to write a program that will add 2 digits. Given 2 digits, it will add and give me the output. So traditional programming will take this data 2 comma 2 and this addition command that is adding those two, and will add and give you the output. So 2 plus 2, the output is going to be 4. All right. So what happens in machine learning now is that we are going to give the data as it is, that is 2 comma 2. That is the data set, those 2 digits, and now we'll actually give it the output. So output 4. So basically, what I'm doing here is I'm telling the machine that you need to come up with a program that will give me the output 4 given these 2 digits 2 comma 2. Got it? So it will actually come up with its own program. So what are the different more own operation basically? So what are the different kinds of operations that you can think of that will actually give you the output 4 given the input 2 comma 2? So what are the different kinds of operations that can happen? Yep. So add, multiply, exponent. Okay, awesome. So you guys are really like math geeks over here. So yeah, so you can have all kinds of operations like adding 2 plus 2 will give you 4, multiplying 2 into 2 will give you 4, and 2 to the power 2 will also give you 4. So based on this, this machine learning algorithm will actually give you the program that best fits the data. So right now I only have one data point. So that's why there is so much confusion. That is, it can be addition, it can be multiplication, it can be exponentiation. But if I add some more data points, that is, if I add 3 comma 3 and 6, then it will be more sure that it is basically an addition program that we want. That is, 3 plus 3 will only be 6. If you multiply 3 into 3, the output is not going to be 6, it is going to be 9. So yeah, this is what machine learning is. So this is what the basic funda is regarding machine learning. So I just want to give you a quick example of machine learning over here. So let's say you want to do you have a bot which you like, which you would like to be intelligent. So it wants to classify images. So given an image, this particular bot will tell you what is there in that image. So this is an image of a really cute kitten. So this bot, on given this particular image, it will tell you whether it is a cat or a dog or a ship or a boat. So obviously it's a cat. We know that because we are intelligent systems basically. And like for a machine, this is a huge task. So this is why there is so much of research going on in this field, and so much of noise around this field. Okay, so let's move on to how machine learning is being used in some really disruptive companies. So, like I'll just go over a couple of companies that are actually using machine learning, and you guys are actually using those products on a day-to-day basis. For example, right now all of us are in a lockdown, all of us are in quarantine, and like I think most of us would be spending most of our time on Netflix. So at least it's true for me. So I spend like 40% of my time on Netflix. And the way that they are, so Netflix, if you guys like when you use Netflix, you see that there are these recommendations of movies that come to you. So recommendations on movies, TV shows, documentaries, whatever, based on your likings. So how does Netflix actually come up with this recommendation? So it is basically all based on machine learning only. So it is something called as a recommender algorithm, a recommendation algorithm. So it will collect your data, your past TV shows that you watched, past movies that you watched, and then come up with uh, uh, possible TV shows that you might be actually interested in. Okay. Then the next one that I want to delve into is Google advertising. So has it ever happened to you guys that you searched for something on Amazon, and then you moved on to some other website, and you see the same ad for a similar product or the same product on that particular website as well? So this happens to me a lot. So it's like Google is actually trying to read my mind. Like it knows like what I'm searching for these days, what I'm interested in these days, and like whatever website I go to, it is just bombarding me with the same kind of products. So this is how Google AdSense, the product is called AdSense. They are using machine learning to identify your likes, your dislikes, the things that you're interested in right now, and doing some kind of targeted advertising so that you can actually go and buy the product based on what you're liking right now. So this is how Google is using it. So you have more. So I can go deeper into others as well. So like LinkedIn and Facebook use a lot of social networking algorithms, right? For example, suggesting you people whom you may know based on people whom you have already interacted with. So there are tons and tons of machine learning based products out there that are disrupting the market right now and actually changing the world that we are living in. So this is why this is going to be the future, because it is going to be really each and every decision is now from now onwards is going to be powered by machine learning. Okay, let's go ahead. So yeah, so Now let's go into the terminologies that we are going to be using throughout this course. Okay, so have you guys
Shraddha?
ever heard of, hello?
Shraddha,
Yeah?
just one question from Sneha,
Mhm.
which is how
Okay.
is AI different from ML?
Okay, so this is a very common question. So AI is the superset and ML is a part of AI. So artificial intelligence is just a domain name. So like machine learning is basically the actual heart of AI. So that's how machines actually become artificially intelligent. So you have other aspects of AI as well. So any kind of rules that you come up with can that might seem like that might make a particular system intelligent. It can be called AI, but machine learning is a particular branch of AI that will that actually builds on data that actually tries to learn based on past examples and then give you the actual like tries to predict the unknown based on the past examples. So machine learning is a more mathematical field, and it actually gives you it encompasses of all the algorithms, all the probability and statistics that you need to know. So that's what it is. So I hope that answered your question correctly to your satisfaction, Sneha. Okay. So moving on. Wait, okay. So moving on to
Just
the
one more
term.
question, if you can take.
Uh-huh.
So some people want to know the relation between data science and ML. So
Okay.
if you could just highlight that in a line or two.
Yeah, so data science is once again a huge encompassing term for machine learning, data analytics, data engineering, etc. Everything put together is data science. So what we are doing basically is just data science will also have some branches like data visualization using different algorithms like different libraries in Python, or it will also have different kinds of analytics that you do in Excel. So everything put together is data science. And machine learning is what you actually it's more based on the like trying to learn a function that will actually predict the unknown for you. ML is a part of data science. Yes, that is true. For data analytics, required strong mathematics. So for data analytics, yeah. So I would say that in order to do any kind of data related operations, like for example, any kind of analytics that you want to do, any kind of machine learning that you want to do, you need to have a really good quantitative background, that is mathematical background, because like it's all about probability. This world is all about uncertainty and probability. So you'll get into that later on, but right now so IoT is not a part of machine learning. IoT is Internet of Things, and it's more into the realm of like robotics. Or like I mean, I would like to say robotics, but I'm not completely sure of it. But yeah, mm,
Okay, Shraddha, thanks a lot. Now
yeah,
let's continue.
yeah. Okay, got it. Um, Okay, so delving into the terminologies. So let's say I want to come up with the like I want to actually predict the price of a house. So the first terminology that I will cover is features. So features are nothing but the input data or the different attributes that are related to a data point. So let me ask you a question over here. So if I want to predict, if I'm let's say I'm a real estate agent right now. Okay, and I want to predict the like I want to price a house. So let's say someone comes up to me with their house and says to me that I want to sell this house. So quote me a good price. So what do you think I should be considering? What all different things do you think I should be considering in order to like come up with a good price? Mm-hmm. Location, number of rooms, age, condition, facilities, locality, floor, location, society, condition. Yeah, all of these are right. All of these are correct answers. So yeah, so for first one is the actually the square footage. That is how big is the house. And then second is the number of bedrooms. Someone already pointed it out. Then you have number of bathrooms. Then you have the location where it is situated in, because some places, some areas would be more posh than the others, so the cost of that particular location would be higher. Then something that is something that is little less intuitive, that is view. So if it is an ocean view house or a sea view house, or if it is located on some 50th floor or something that has a really good cityscape view, then the price of the house will go up. So these are the basic features basically that are defining the price of this house. So these are the input data. Now second terminology that we need to cover is the observation. So basic observation is nothing but the output or the result. So this observation has many different names that are actually synonymous with it: observation, response, target variable, label, etc., etc. So when I say all of them, all of them just mean the output. So for example, if I'm asking the question of like, what is my house price, then the observation is going to be uh, yep, amount. Yeah, so yeah, the amount of that, the price of the house basically. Yeah, so that is, if I'm asking the question of what is the house price, then the output is going to be what is the amount that I would have to pay, that is the dollar amount or like rupees amount. Then second is, if I'm asking the question like I want to sell this house within a month. So let's say someone comes up to me and says that I want to sell this house within a month, will it sell or not? So observation at that point is going to be yes or no. Whether if it will sell, then it will be yes, and if it will not sell, then it will be no. So what is the difference between these two questions, and what is the difference between the observation values of these two questions? So binomial, Boolean, one is numerical, other is Boolean. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So for the first question, the answer is numerical. That is the dollar value. That is the amount that you need to pay. Is going to take any value between zero. I mean, zero is not sensical, but yeah, it can. Technically, it is possible. Theoretically, it is possible to have a house with zero value, and until like it can go up to like whatever the maximum amount that you want. And in the second question, the answer can only take two values, yes or no. So the first, so this is yes or no answer is called the categorical variable. So a variable that can only take some set of values is called categorical variable. So in this case, it is binomial. So that means it can only take two values, yes or no. And in the first case, when I ask the house price, then it is a numerical variable. The output is a numerical variable. It can take any real value. Okay, then there is a third question that I would like to ask. So let's say a person comes up to me and says that he saw a really good, really nice house, and that unfortunately that house is already sold to someone else, and that person is not looking to sell, and he wants to buy a similar house. So what he's essentially asking me is basically just like, I have this house, I'll show me some similar houses. I want to look at some similar houses. How can I do that? So what do you think is the output in this case? So if someone comes and asks me this question, what will I say? Tell them. So it's a set of houses with similar features. Yes, exactly. Once again, so question, I'll just reframe the question. So let's say I have a house that there's a person who came up to me and says that there is this house that I really like, but I cannot buy that right now. So I want to look at some similar houses. I want the same two-bedroom house with a sea view or on the 50th floor, something like that. And just and he'll ask me to show me similar houses. So based on that, what will be the answer that I'll give him? Yeah, similar category. Exactly. So what I'll do is that I'll just take some set of 10 to 15 houses that will be that are similar to this particular house, and we'll just show that person, okay, these are similar houses, you can choose one of them. Yeah, that's it. So Okay, so this is basically what I wanted to elaborate on, and we will go into how we'll be answering each and every type of these questions. So these are the main three questions that you get, like you get over and over again, and like we'll delve into how this can actually, how we'll be actually solving for each and every question of this type. Before I do that, I want to go into the basics of ML modeling. So, what happened? What's what I want to essentially highlight is like no matter the task, that is, no matter the question that you are asked, there are some aspects of machine learning modeling that will remain the same. That is, first you need to feed in data. That is, data is the electricity for this model to run. Without this, you cannot actually have a model. So yeah, you need the data. And then you need to actually specify a task. So for example, the question that you're asking is basically a task. So this question can be like one of the three questions or something completely different, whatever comes to your mind. Then based on that, you also need to have some kind of model training that you need to do, and like you need to set some parameters and optimization. So right now, let's just say that this is a black box. So what I mean over here is exactly just so this model training will have some kind of basically the exact way a machine learning model is trained. So that is a bit more involved. So there are a lot of advanced mathematics going on in there. So I just don't want to delve deeper into that. So it's just that we have a lot of algorithms already in place, already coded up in Python that we can directly use. And optimization, what it means is basically just trying to get your ML model as close to the actual price as possible. So let's say you have someone comes up to me with a house and tells me that predict the house, price of this house, and I want to be as close to the actual price of this house. Like I want it to be as best valued as possible. So I need to optimize my algorithm. So this is what it is called. So like bringing the predicted value as close to the actual value is called optimization. So right now we'll just say that these two things put together are a black box, and we'll just use some algorithms already coded up in Python. And then the output of this model is basically going to be intelligence. So intelligence is nothing but the capability to predict the unknown. If you're able to do that, you are intelligent, and then evaluate the model. So even if it is an intelligent model that is it is able to predict some prices, it should be as good as as good as the actual price. So we'll be evaluating the model. Okay, so any doubts regarding these terminologies, please post in the chat. Okay. What is a black box? So black box is basically just something, just consider it as a black hole. So it's just a bot that you have. You don't know what is going on inside. You just trust it completely. You actually just rely on it to actually come up with the algorithm. So yeah, we'll go into what model training parameters and optimization are in the longer version of this course. You don't have to worry about those right now. You don't have to worry about parameters. You don't have to worry about model training or optimization right now. If you just treat it as a black box. Black box means you don't know what's going on in there, but you are just certain that if you give it something, it will give you the right output. Okay, so let's go into the type of machine learning tasks. So machine learning can be actually broadly categorized into two: supervised and unsupervised learning. So what I mean when I say supervised learning is basically just that you have some kind of past data regarding the observation that you want. So for example, if I want to predict the house prices, I already have a set of houses that got sold last year, and I already know the features of that house, and I already know what is the price at which these houses went. So that means I already know some kind of supervising factor, that is this output variable, that is the price of this past sold houses is called the observation, right? So this particular output variable will actually act as a supervising factor in order to make sure that my ML model is as close to the actual prices as possible. And when I say unsupervised learning, so unsupervised learning is a bit more involved. So in that, you do not have a concept of known output variable. Okay, so I'll delve deeper into that. Let's just put a pin on that right now, and we'll delve deeper into supervised learning right now. Okay, so supervised learning actually can be once again categorized into two: classification and regression. So I will just go into like in the context of the questions that we asked. So there was the second question that I asked, that is, will a house sell next month? Yes or no? So when I have this kind of a categorical answer, as I said, this yes or no is a binomial variable and it's a categorical variable. If I have this kind of an answer that I want to come up with, then it is a classification problem that I'm dealing with. So if I look at this cartoon over here in this write down this right below this particular segregation. So in this cartoon over here, you can see that there are some houses colored as red that did not sell within a month, and there are some houses in green that got sold within a month. So these are past houses. These are houses that were sold in the last year. So what I've done is just taken those houses and determined whether they got sold in a month or not. Now I have this unknown blue house that this person has come up to me with this new person who wants to sell his house, and he wants to know whether it will get sold within a month or not. So it's up to me now to classify it. So like whether it belongs to the fast selling category or whether it belongs to the slow selling category. So the way I can do this is like we can go into the classification algorithms later on in the longer version of this course. But to just give you an idea of it, so if I were to just plot these data points on a two-dimensional plane over here, so I can just draw a boundary over here with this black line is basically the boundary that segregates these two classes, that is these two categories. So so I'll just say that anything to the right of this boundary will get sold within a month, and anything to the left of this boundary will take some longer time. That's all. It is about classification. So next, so if you guys have any questions, just put it in the chat. Okay.
So,
So
Shraddha,
now,
people want to know what exactly is a regression.
yeah. So that's what I'm coming to right now.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is the second part of like supervised learning. So first one I explained classification over here, and second is regression. So regression, so let's say I have this question that says like what is the house price? Like a person comes up to me and asks the price of this house. So the output that is actually as expected out of this question is actually the amount that the person has to pay, that is the price of this house. So it is a continuous like it is a numerical value, right? So any like and the function that I want, like I want to come up with a function that will actually tell me, given these features of this house, that whether like what is the square footage of that house, number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, etc., etc. Based on that, I need to come up with the price of this house. So this is basically called regression. So what we are trying to do is regress based on these features and come up with a constant value. So here in this image in the right side here, I have what I've done is I've just like put a lot of houses like on x-axis I have the, let's say I have square foot living, and on the y-axis I have the price at which the house got sold. So these red data points are basically just different houses that got sold at some particular price last year. So you can actually see that there is a there is a increasing relationship between those. So this is pretty intuitive, right? So like as you increase the size of the house, that is square foot living of this house, the price will also increase. So the thing is that let's say these red dots are not like does not cover each and every point that you can have between 20 and 100, right? So let's say you have a house with a square footage that does not like you have never seen that square foot value in your data set ever before, and you want to come up with the house price for that particular house. So it is easier. So it is easier to actually fit a line on this data set over here, this black line, and the value of this particular line at a particular x value will actually give you the price of the house. I'll go deeper into like fitting the line and all in the next slide, in the coming slides. But this is basically, so whenever you are dealing with a continuous numerical variable, then regression is a go-to algorithm that you can use. Then third type of so any questions over here? Difference between classification and regression. So classification is basically just trying to segregate between two categories. So there is no, like, as I said, it is a categorical variable that you're trying to come to. So that's why it's called classification, and like there's no continuous numerical value output that is actually expected out of classifications. But in regression, the output expected is actually a continuous numerical value. That is, for each and every x value, you need, for each and every set of variables, you need to come up with a numerical value for a particular observation. Okay, so let's move on to. So if you guys have any questions, just post in the. Okay, so some of you guys have some kind of background, it seems, in classification. So I'll go deeper into that later on. But I just want to complete the types of ML tasks before I go deeper into that. Okay, so
just one thing. Yeah. In regression and classification, can there be two inputs, or can there?
Yeah. So the input size can be anything actually. So right now, for the sake of visualization, I put it as as just one input. But for like classification, the number of features that you consider can be anything. For regression as well, you can have many different types of features that you can actually use. So it is not very easy to visualize it on a PPT right now. There are some more advanced algorithms to actually visualize them as well. You can explore that later on. But right now, I'm just for the visualization purpose, I've just kept it as one input, and for the simplicity of the course.
And just one more question. So classification, Amit Mathur is asking this question, whether classification gives a range of house prices and regression only one price of house.
So that is a really good question. You can actually do that. So in classification, what we can do is that we can put some buckets of house prices. So for example, whether this house price will be valued at $100,000 to $200,000 or $200,000 to $300,000. So these are two categories, right? So you can actually use that for classification. But the problem now is that like you want to actually get the actual price of the house, right? So why would you actually want to just go ahead with the range of the house prices if you can actually get the actual price? So that's why like regression answers your question of actually depicting the house price. But if you're more interested in just getting the house range value, then you can just go ahead with classification and just treat the house values as different buckets of values, different ranges. Any more questions?
Okay, sure. That answers the question. Let's move on.
Okay. So the third question that we had asked was like, I want to look at similar houses. How can I do that? So this is where unsupervised learning comes in. So there's no concept of observation here. You do not have to tell the customer that this is the price that you're looking at, or this will sell, or this is the price range, etc., etc. You just want the customer to you just want to show the customer some set of similar houses. Okay, for that, what we do is clustering. So clustering is basically just taking a house and looking at different attributes of all the houses and seeing like what are the most similar houses to this particular house. So there are a lot of different algorithms for this as well. We'll go deeper into that in the longer version of this course. And also, basically, all you need to understand right now is that clustering will help you get similar kinds of data points together. So like here you can see there are two clusters over here. So this first cluster has 5 data points and the other one also has 5 data points, but it's just that all of these 5 data points are very similar to each other. That's all. So any questions on this? All right. So let's move on. Okay, so let's move on to the actual modeling part of this course. That is simple linear regression. So we'll be doing house price prediction, like as I said already. So I have a data set of all the houses that got sold in a particular area. So the house data that I have right now is the one that got sold in Seattle. Regarding yeah, so these are houses in some particular county of Seattle, and we'll see how we can actually come up with the house price of an unknown house using linear regression, simple linear regression. Okay. So here, what I've done here on this slide is basically just plotted square footage on x-axis and on y-axis. I've taken price. So to like, as someone had already asked whether we can have multiple inputs, we can actually have multiple inputs, but for the simplicity of of the course right now, I've just kept it as one input. So just based on square feet, I'm trying to come up with the price of a particular house. So let's say this is this green house over here that I'm trying to sell. And I have a data of around 15 houses that got sold in the last year. Okay. So based on this data of the 15 houses, I'm trying to come up with a price for this greenhouse. So if I look at the square foot value of this greenhouse, I do not have an exact house already in my data set of which I already know the price. So I cannot directly give a price to this particular house. So how do you think what do you think would be the best way to give the price of this house? What are the different ways that you can do, like just from intuition? Fit curve, range of the price, grouping, nearest points, regress, linear line, nearest points, take the two closed house prices, average charges. Okay. So I think all of these answer cover almost all of the answers possible. So let's see. So the first solution is obviously the nearest point. Someone had already pointed it out correctly. So I'll just take these two nearest houses and I'll just take the average of these two houses. And I'll just quote the average price as the price for this house. But what are the actual shortcomings with using this method? What do you think? So I just took two nearest houses, two houses that have the similar square foot value. And I just predicted the house price for this greenhouse as the average of these two. What are the shortcomings of that? House may be worth more. Accuracy, less accurate, not accurate. Approximate value, locality is not factored. Yep, exactly. Locality is not factored. So basically, we haven't actually considered all the other data points that we have in our data set. So basically, we haven't looked at all the other houses, and we have just made a decision on the houses that have really similar square footage values. So that means that we are not doing the best that we can do, right? So undermining other features. So let's say, so that is something like I said, for the simplicity of this course, we'll just look at one feature. I will go into multiple linear regression later on. But right now, just from a data perspective, like we aren't using the entire data set that is available to us, and we are just relying on two really similar houses, that is houses that have the same square foot value, and we are just trying to base our decision based on that. So let's say I take another approach. What I do is that I just take a range of square footage values. So let's say this particular greenhouse has a square foot of 1500 square feet, and let's say I just take plus minus 500. So I'll just take all the houses that have the square foot of plus minus 500. That is from 1000 square feet, that is 1500 minus 500, and 2000 square feet, that is 1500 plus 500. So I just take all the houses that have square footage values in this range, and I'll just give you the average of these houses. So in this particular range, I have all of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 houses. I just take the average. So average value could be this particular value. If I were to extend this to intercept the y-axis, I'll get a price, let's say around $400,000. And I'll just quote this particular price as the actual predicted house price. So what is once again the question, what do you think are the shortcomings of using this approach? So what are the shortcomings of just taking a really small neighborhood of square footage values and just taking the average of all? Yes, it's still an average. Yeah. So not exact. Yeah. So this is better than the first approach. That is, at least we have some more data in our consideration. But obviously, this is not accurate because we still are not actually coming up with. Let's say you have a data set that, let's say you have a house that is very different, and you have no really close houses to it. So let's say you have a house that has 2,500 square feet, and the maximum data point that you have is actually just 2,000 square feet. So 500 square feet is a really lot, is a huge amount, and the price cannot be actually average of all the houses that have less than 2,500 square feet, right? Okay, so that's why this approach is also not that good. So what we can do is that fitting a line, that is fitting a line onto these data points, will actually help you come up with the house price for all the unknown houses as well. So it doesn't matter like whether it is really close to your the already known houses, or whether the square footage values is really close to the already known values or not, or like it doesn't matter, like whatever square footage value you throw at me, I can actually give you a good amount on that particular house. Okay, so what next, coming on to the next slide. So I'm just fitting a curve over here. So what do you think is the best fit for this data? So so this line, the value at this line for each and every x value will actually give you the price of the house. So which one do you think is the best approximate based on this? So let's just call the top left one option A, top right one as option B, then bottom left as option C, and bottom right as option D. So what do you which one do you think is the best approximate? D, obviously, yes. D is a really good approximate, but the problem here is D is a really complex function. So if you were to actually write this green line as a function, it will be really complex. And also it looks like the best fit because it actually is able to give you the most accurate price for each and every point. But when you look at in machine learning, what we actually consider the best fit is the one that is the simplest one. So simplest one, and also that can actually capture the trend of the data. So the actual answer is B, option B. So just using a line, we can actually go ahead and predict the correct house prices based on data that we have. So this is what we are going to explore from now on. We'll explore how we can actually fit this line better. And okay, before I go there, I just want to ask a really basic question. So what is the equation of a line? Yes, y equal to mx plus c. Okay, what is m and what is c? What is m in this equation? Slope. M is the slope. And c is the constant. Yes. So basically, yeah, c is also called the intercept, offset, blah blah blah. So so basically, the properties of a line are you can actually define a line based on the slope and intercept. So this is what we'll be trying to do now. That is, we'll be trying to see like what is the best line that we can fit to this data based on m and c. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. So here I have this, once again, this graph. As I said that I want to fit a line. Let's say I fit this line, this black colored line. So this particular line will have properties M1, C1. So this is basically M1, like this is a line that will give you the price based on the square foot value, based on the slope and the intercept of this line. But the thing is, I can draw a similar line, this pink line. Yeah, so this is the predicted house price, this black dot. And similarly, I can draw this pink line that also somewhat like clearly shows the trend. Clearly see, we can see that it actually follows the trend. But the predicted house, but it has a different set of M and C values. That is, the slope of this line is different and the intercept of this line is also different. So if I were to use the pink line instead of the black line, the predicted house price for this green colored house will be slightly higher. That is given by this pink dot. This is a huge dot, but yeah, you get the point. So the thing is, now machine learning is all about, I mean, regression is all about finding this line. So finding the correct pair of M and C values that will best fit this data. So how do you think we will do this? What do you think, how we will actually go about doing this? Minimum error from all points. Line should cover maximum points. How to take that line? So yeah, this line is actually given by the linear regression algorithm that we see, where whatever satisfies max conditions, line contains maximum points. So minimum standard deviation for all points. Minimize the error. Yes, so minimizing the error, that is the key over here. So the error is basically just just the price, the actual, let's say there is a house over here for which you already know the price, and you just see which of these two lines have a closer house price to those the already known houses. So based on that error, you just see whichever line has the minimum error, and you just choose that line as our linear regression fit. Fixing the error. Yes, exactly. Okay, so let's go on to training this model. So the thing is, minimizing this error in itself is actually called the optimization of the machine learning model. So that has a lot of multivariate calculus involved in it. So we will be going into the deeper mathematics in the longer version of this course. But let's just say that we have an algorithm that will already minimize this error and give me this M and C, the optimal M and C values for a given data set. Before
Shweta,
I go,
just a few people are asking you to repeat this in brief. So if in 2 lines you can repeat.
Oh, yeah, sure. Okay. I can go back and repeat. Okay, so did you guys understand that we are trying to actually fit a line to this data and why we are trying to do that? Yes. Okay, so fitting a line. So as I said, a line's equation is given by y equal to mx plus c, right? So here y is the output variable, that is the house price, and x is the square footage value, that is how big is this house. So then what we do is like y equal to mx plus c will actually just give you this particular green line. So the thing is that we have a lot of options for this line as well. So either you can have this black line, which has the value, which has M and C. So one thing that I want to make it very clear, a line is actually defined by its slope and intercept. So I hope that is clear, because y and x are variables over here. So a line's parameters are basically slope and intercept, that is M and C. So this particular black line has a particular defining factors, a set of defining factors like M and C, that is slope and intercept M1, C1. And if I were to use this line as my linear regression fit, then the house price will be this black dot. But there is another line, this pink line, that I can also fit to this data, and this does look like a good fit. If I were to use this pink line with a different set of attributes, so the slope of this pink line is different from the slope of this black line, that is M2, and the intercept is also different, that is C2. So the definition of this line in itself is different. And if I were to use this pink line as the estimating factor as the fit, then the house price would be this pink dot, which will be slightly higher than the price that we would have predicted with the black line. Does it clear all your doubts regarding this? Okay, cool. So let's move on to before we.
So Dhiroj is asking this question, whether clustering means unsupervised classification.
Unsupervised classification. So, okay, you can call it that, but you actually do not know the classes, right? So, what will you call the different categories as? So you clustered into you segmented the data set into two, let's say. What would you call them? So is it? I mean, there's no label associated with it, right? Yeah, got it. Okay,
Okay,
so
let's
yeah.
continue.
Mm. Okay, let's go on. So before, okay, we'll go into training this model now. But before training, I need to outline some best practices whenever we actually train a machine learning model. So first, we actually divide the data set into two, that is training set and test set. So let me just draw an analogy over here of your school. So in school, whenever we were learning a subject, we were bombarding with a lot of we were bombarded with a lot of assignments and textbooks and notebooks and homework, etc., etc. And at the end of the term, we were given an examination, right? So what happens during the term is basically you're trying to train in that subject. That is, you're trying to learn that subject based on all the homework and assignments that you have. And at the end of this term, in examination, you get a set of really different questions, but you can answer them based on all the homework that you've done. And based on that, you can actually correctly or wrongly, if you haven't actually done any homework, based on the test will actually evaluate you, like whether you have trained yourself well in that particular subject or not. So just like that, we are going to design a similar framework for our machine learning model. So we'll define a training set. So here, training set will be used to train our models. That is to actually like fit that line, that is coming up with the M and C value, that is intercept and the slope. So here I've written a term that you guys might not know, cross validation. So you just don't have to worry about it right now. Just think of it as an algorithm that will help you get the correct M and C values. And the second part is the test set. So we will not show the houses in this data set, that is the test set, to the model at all. So these will be completely unknown houses to this particular model, and we will be actually conducting an examination for this model based on this test set. Got it? So we won't be touching this until the very end. Okay, so let's go on. So what happens in the training and the testing phases of this model? So when we're training the model, what we do is that we take some known house features, that is, these are house features from the training set and their known house prices. We feed it to the ML algorithm, and it will actually give us the program to calculate the house price for a given set of house features. Then while we're testing the model, we will give this model some unknown houses features. So that is uh, these are actually houses from the test set that the model has never seen. And based on the program, we will calculate the houses price, and then we'll see whether this houses price was actually the how close it was to the actual house price. This is how we do the training of this model and evaluation of this model. So testing of this model is nothing but the evaluation of this model. So any questions on this? Because yeah, this is a pretty new topic. That's why I did not ask any questions on this already. So yeah, if you guys have any questions on this, just post in the chat. Mm, testing is evaluating the trained data, right? So I mean, you evaluate a model, you do not evaluate the data. So this model is basically the program to calculate the house function. So sorry, house price, and this will be actually calculating how well this program is actually performing. Okay, got it. Cool. So let's move on to the more fun part of this course. So let's train a model. Okay. So have you guys ever seen something like this? Have you guys ever seen a similar page? No, some people have seen, some people have not. Yes, no, yes, no, 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 never. Okay. So I'll just assume that since there are some people who have never seen this, I'll just assume that no one has seen this. Okay. So this is basically called a Jupyter notebook. So this is, okay, so let's take a break. Yeah, so we can do one thing. We can actually just take a break for like a minute or so, and you guys could probably just have a sip of water or organize your notes or something. So we'll resume in 2 minutes. All right.
Hi guys. Uh, I think I just wanted to repeat this message again for those of you joined late that we finally launched the Python full module course. It's going to be conducted by Pareen Jain, who's an IIT Kharagpur graduate and a data scientist as well with a reputed firm. The modules are here. The price is here. It's an introductory course from our side to those of you who attended our course in Python and ML. So just wanted to remind you guys that we've starting on 1st of May and 2nd of May, and it's a modular weekend module course. So I mean, you all can join during the weekend as well. Recordings will be available for this course to those who join this one, and we will also be issuing a certificate for those who participate in the course after the completion of their respective project. So please have a look, and that's what I want to say.
All right. So I hope everyone had their break, so we can actually delve into this notebook that I've created. Yeah, we will be sharing a doc as well that will give you an introduction of a Jupyter notebook. So this particular, I'll start sharing. Sorry, I forgot. Okay. So this particular Jupyter notebook, how to install it in your computer and how to get started with it. There is a doc that we have actually put together that you guys can actually use to install it in your laptop or your desktop. So I'll just give you a brief introduction of Jupyter for those who have never seen this. So this is basically a must-have for a person who wants to. This is a skill that everyone must have. Anyone who wants to get started in this field of data science. So this is backed by Python, so you can run your Python scripts in this notebook, and also you can actually run pieces of your code and examine the output there and then, so it becomes really easy to debug. And also there are a lot of inbuilt libraries that are required for machine learning. For example, sklearn over here is the major library that all of us use in the field of data science. And then you have matplotlib, so this is used for plotting different variables. Then pandas is going to be covered in the data analytics course with Python that Ankit was just talking about. So pandas is a really handy library that will help you deal with data, that is handling data, and that's why I would really encourage you guys to take that course as well. And yeah, so this is basically the libraries. So all the others you don't have to worry about. Right now, let's just say that this is some jadoo that people have done, the machine learning geniuses have done, and made our lives very easy. Okay, so we will be like, this is Python. This is completely in Python. So Python is the preferred language for all the people who want to get started in machine learning. Actually, in industries also, Python is widely used. Okay, so first, I'll just run this code line by line so that you guys can follow what I'm doing. So first, I'm going to import these libraries into my notebook. Done. Now I'm going to read this data. So I have this home data.csv. This is a comma delimited file. So this one I'm just going to load in this notebook. So in order to run a cell, that is, these blocks of code are called cells. So in order to run a cell, I just press shift enter, and voila, I have the data. Okay, so what I'll do here is now I want to just see a sample of this data. Like, what does this data look like? So I'll just type in sales.head and see what it looks like. So let's just take a minute and see what this data exactly looks like. So these are just 5 rows of this data. So basically the way it is arranged is that these are columns. Basically this ID, date, price, bedrooms, bathroom, these are columns. And these horizontal horizontal lines are basically just the rows. So yeah, so here the first column is the ID. So each and every house has a unique ID that with which we can identify it. So it's very difficult to actually put in something like third house in the 5th lane in some county, right? So that's why it is easier to assign a numerical ID to each and every house. Then date is like the date on which this particular house got sold. Then price is actually the price of this house. Then bedrooms, number of bedrooms you have in this house, number of bathrooms, what is square foot living. That is, square foot living is basically just square footage. Square foot lot is just built up area. So if you guys are familiar with if you guys are familiar with real estate, then you would know that there is a carpet area and then there is a built up area. So yeah, so why bathroom has a decimal value? It is because like you can have a half bath as well. You can have a full bath, you can have a half bath, quarter bath, blah, blah, blah. So why is the view 0? So, okay, so this is where like view and waterfront over here are basically categorical variables. So you can either have a view or you can not have a view. So based on that, that is why you have this like 0 or 1 variables. So these values can take it as 0. The values that this column can take is 0 or 1. Cool. Then, okay, so here you can see that there are some dot dot dot. So that means that I do not have enough space to display all the columns over here. So I'll just like print all the columns that are present in my data set. So that will give you the exact like picture of what are the different features that we have in for each and every house. So yeah, so like you have price, bedrooms, bathrooms, then you have view, waterfront, like which year was it built, what is the condition of this house. So yeah, someone had rightly pointed out that condition of a house also like plays a really good role, a really important role in predicting the price of the house. Then zip code is nothing but the location of this house, etc. So you don't have to worry about the others. These are the main attributes that we'll be looking at. So now next, I just want to do some kind of data exploration. So I just want to see like how the how the price varies with square foot living value. So what I do is I'll just plot a scatter plot. So this plot looks something like what we already saw over here. It's just that I have much more data set. Okay, so like I would say that the syntax of this code, I would say that you don't have to go into the syntax of this code right now. Just follow with the algorithm right now. And like these are all pandas functions that you can actually explore in the data analytics part of the course. Okay, so so this particular scatter plot is basically just giving you giving you a visual representation of how the price is varying with the square foot living. So you can see that I have a lot of data clustered over this particular region. That is, most of my houses are have the square foot value from I would say 0 over here, 0 to 8,000, and the prices vary from 0 to $4 million. So it is pretty difficult to actually just look at the data and see the minimum and maximum values, obviously. So there is a really handy function in pandas called describe. This will just describe the different statistical attributes of each and every column. So for example, I can see over here that the minimum price, minimum house price that got sold in this data set is $75,000, and the maximum house price has been $7.7 million. So you don't have to worry about this 75%, 50%, 25%. We'll go into that later on. But right now, we just have to look at minimum and maximum values and the average, mean being the average. So on an average, this data set contains houses in the price range of $540,000. And then if I look at the minimum bedrooms that a house has in this particular data set, that is 0. So you have actually houses with no bedrooms. And then you also have houses with no bathrooms as well. And the smallest house in this data set has 290 square footage. And if I look at the maximum of each and every point, then we have a really huge house with 33 bedrooms. So probably one room for a day of the month probably. And the number of bathrooms are only 8. So I think this biggest house doesn't have as many bathrooms as I would have imagined. But yeah, so the maximum number of bathrooms that you have in this data set is 8. And the biggest house has 13,550 square feet. So you can imagine that this is a really, really huge house. Probably it belongs to Bill Gates or something. I'm not sure whether he lives in Seattle, but yeah, probably some kind of celebrity. Okay. So next, as I said, we have actually explored the data, done some kind of basic data exploration over here, and this is all we need actually right now. So then right now, like what next step is to actually prepare the data in a way that is, as I told you, to split the data into train and test, and then into train and test. So what I'm doing here is just splitting this data into train and test sets. So right now what I've done is I've taken 80% of my data into the training set and 20% of the data into the test set. So this is the accepted convention across the data science field, that the split could be 80-20. But you guys can actually go ahead and experiment around with it with 70-30, 50-50, etc., etc. So the major convention is to follow an 80-20 split. Okay, now that we have split the data into train and test, anything that we can actually do is anything that we need. So the next thing that we need to do is basically just train the algorithm. That is just called linear regression function from scikit-learn and fit your data to your train set. So that is features. These are the train features, square foot train. I've just taken one feature right now for the simplicity of it, and I'm not taking any other values like bedrooms or bathrooms or etc. I'm just looking at square foot limit. That's all. So, and the output, the observation that is the target variable is prices, and I've just passed the price value for the training data set. And bang, it did not even take a second to train this data. Once again, I trained it again. So yeah, we have trained this data now. So now we need to actually interpret it. We need to see, so what has this data done? What has this training step actually done? Can someone tell me? What has this actually accomplished right now? Like training is done. Yeah. Yeah. So what does it mean by developing a model? As I said already, so you guys need to think about the line that you are fitting. Exactly. So the M and C values are now determined. All the optimization and model training has been done, and you already have the M and C value. So let's output the M value and the C value over here. So the slope of this line is basically 283.96. That is, the M value is 283.96, and the intercept is minus 48,257. Okay, so let's take a minute to ponder over these values. So what does it really mean when I say the slope value is 283.97? Yes, how do we interpret M physically? Yes, that's what I'm getting to. Inclination with x-axis, yeah, that is what it is, like from a mathematical perspective. But in the physical sense, what do you think that would mean? Cost per square feet. Yes, exactly. So, so those of you could like basically what you need to think about, what are the units of M right now. So let's say like you have this equation, price equal to M into square foot living plus C. Then M, what are the units of M over here? What is the units? What are the units of slope over here? So the unit of price is dollars. So you can only add two quantities of two entities of the same unit. So C also has the value unit of dollars, and M, in order to have the complete uh, like complete unit of dollars, M needs to have a unit value of dollar per square footage. Yes, exactly. So what it eventually means is that if I, okay, so let me pose this as a question instead. So if I increase the square foot living by 1, what will be the increase in price? What do you think will be the increase in price if I just increase the, if I have a house at, let's say, 500 square feet, and I know the price, let's say the price is P, and what will be the new price if I were to look at a house that has 501 square feet? Yes, exactly. So it means that for an increase of one unit, that is 1 square feet, 1 square foot in the square foot living, then the price will increase by $283.96. Yeah. Then the second point is interpreting C, intercept, that is the intercept. So like, okay, this might sound ridiculous to you, but if someone actually comes up to me and says that I want to sell a house with 0 square foot living, so I mean there's no space. Then if someone actually comes up to me and says this, then what do I do? Like if I were just a bot. Value is C, exactly. So the price value that I'll quote is minus 48,000. So, so that would actually mean that I would have to pay him C price. Yes. So yeah, that doesn't make any sense. So that's why you need to have some kind of strategy around it. So you will just put up a board that I'm going to sell houses that have minimum at least 300 square feet. That otherwise I'm not going to sell your house. So yeah, that's how I will be making some money out of it. So moving on, let's actually plot the house price. So okay, so this particular line that we have gotten over here, and this line with a slope of 283 and intercept of minus 48,000. Um, so I've just plotted this line, this red colored line. So physical meaning of C is basically just if I were to if there was a person who came up to me with 0 square footage living, then that is the amount that he would have to pay, something like that. So it's just the offset. So that's like the minimum house price that you need to pay. Yeah. So moving ahead, so this particular model has given me this red line that I've plotted over here. So do you think this particular line does justice to the data that we have? Or do you think this is the trend that you would have thought? No. Does anyone think it should be it actually looks correct? Does anyone think that? No. Okay. So all of you guys are really, really intelligent. So basically, you got a like I would have like if I were me, I would have actually expected the line to look more like this blue colored line, not this red colored line. And that is because why do you think this line the output of this algorithm was not close to blue line, but it was closer to red line? Why do you think that was the case? Minimum error is that is the reason, like that is obviously known, but from visually visually looking at the data, what do you think might be the reason that this line got lower, the slope of this line got lower, that is it has it predicts lower than the actual price that we would have predicted? Less features, yes, that is one factor. more number of data points, highly dense. Okay, yes. So there is this one data point over here, which is actually pulling the line down towards itself. So this is a data point that is very different from the maximum number of houses that you have. Like I said, most of these houses are clustered around 0 to 8,000 square footage value and 0 to 4 million. And yeah, this is basically an outlier. But can you identify other outliers as well in this scatter plot? Yep, there is one at the top over here. So these are, so what do you think are basically outliers? Yep, don't follow the trend, don't, extreme data points. Yep. So these are points, like from a very layman perspective, when you plot such a data, you can just see a data point that is like a very separated from the maximum data points, and that's why it's called an outlier. It's very different from the other data points. It just doesn't look like the data set anymore. So that's why you need to, so this particular data point over here, the one that pulled it down, is actually called a high leverage point. So a high leverage point is basically an outlier that has the capacity to pull the fit towards itself. So I would just like to go into some interactive visual over here. Yeah, okay. So I have a similar data set. So I have these like around 15, 20 points over here. So these are the usual points that I have. And then there are two outliers. So one over here that looks very similar to the data point that we have over here. And there is one point over here that looks very similar to the data point over here. Over here. Okay, so what I'll do is that let's see what happens if I were to remove this particular outlier, that is this high leverage point. So yeah, the line that you see is exactly what it would have been that you had actually expected, like the expected data point. But let's say I once again put this data set or data point into the data set, it just pulls it towards itself. So yeah, it is very important to identify these outliers and actually remove them from your data set so that your fit is more accurate, because obviously this is not the most accurate fit. The accurate fit is actually this one. But like you have this data set in your data point in your data set. So the major factor that the major problem that most people face is actually identifying these outliers and actually removing these. So this in itself is a huge problem, that is anomaly detection. So it is a huge domain of machine learning. There's a ton of research going on here, and it's a really interesting problem as well. And I would encourage you, like we will go into it, like if time permits, we can actually go into it in the longer version of this course. But yeah, it's a really important factor that we need to consider, and we need to remove such points from our data set. Okay, so let's see what happens if I were to remove this data point. So if I were to remove this data point to somewhere here and remove, okay, so then also the trend looks somewhat the same. So there was this data point, for example, this one over here. If I were to remove that, then also the trend would look the same. So it doesn't matter if I keep it in the data set or not. It's just that it's actually following the trend. It is an outlier. It's just that it's not affecting the trend that much. So it is not called a high leverage point. So what do you mean by high leverage? That means it has a really high impact on the fit of the data. Okay. More impact. Yeah, exactly. High leverage points have more impact on the fit of the data. These kinds of outliers are very notorious, and we need to like take them out of the data set. Okay, now let's go on. Now that we have trained the data and we saw how it is actually like what the line looks like and how to interpret the line and what we can actually do to better fit this line, then we can go on to the testing of this data set. So what I'll do right now is that this LR underscore square foot dot predict is nothing but doing this part for me. That is this program to calculate house price. So this is exactly done, like I'm just doing the same thing over here, and based on the house prices, houses in this in this test data set, I'm trying to predict the house price. Okay, so based on the prediction, I have run some metrics. So these are there are some metrics to assess the model. So I'll go deeper into that. So as I said, we need to be evaluating this model, right? So like I said, your in your school, in your teachers would be giving you some questions, and you would be answering them in your examination, and then you would be actually yeah, so the teachers will evaluate. So teachers already know the answer, and they will evaluate your answers and come up with the test scores, right? So exactly that's what we are trying to do over here. Okay, so I've just given some mathematical formulations of three major metrics that we use. That is mean absolute error. Mean absolute error is basically just on an average, how much does your model how much is it off? So if I look at like for the test data set, if I look at the mean absolute error, it's around $170,000. So what it means is that basically just like on an average, when I'm predicting the house prices for the test data set, I'm off by $170,000. Does it make sense? Like, do you guys have any questions over here? All right. Okay, so this is what is mean absolute error. That is basically just taking the difference between the actual output and the predicted output, and just taking the mean of the error that you got, mean of the differences that you got. So that is called the mean absolute error. Then you have mean squared error. Mean squared error is just you got the same difference, that is this predicted minus the actual, and you just squared those values and took the mean of the squared values. So this will help you. The reason why we square here is because squaring a squaring a value actually just spaces it out more. So that means you're penalizing a greater distance, that is a greater difference more than the smaller differences. Then you have the root mean squared error. So you just take the root of the mean squared error and you have root mean squared error. And it's more intuitive because it's more like it has the same unit as the observation, that is the dollars. And you can see that like on an average, if I look at the root mean squared error, so on an average, this model is off by $248,000. That's all. So any questions till now? Why we need root mean square? Any threshold of, so why do we need root mean square? So so this is a more involved topic. So that is so as I said, in optimization step inside the machine learning algorithm, you need to, in order to come up with the MNC value, you need to actually get the error, right? So the difference between two values. So in order to make that error function continuous, so continuous means that like it is differentiable at each and every point. That's why you take a root mean square error, because like RMSE is basically differentiable at each and every point for any difference. Okay, so okay, let's move on. Okay, now let's get into mean square error, how I make big difference. Okay, so it is basically just so mean squared error is like it's not that intuitive because it has the unit of dollar squared. So what does it really mean to have dollar squared? It doesn't mean anything, right? So you take the root of it to get the dollar value, so that it is more intuitive. So that's all like you need to know right now. If you want, like we can go into the calculus of it. It has a really nice proof associated with it, like how it is more how it actually indicates a good fit, a good measure of fit in the longer version of this course. So there is no thresholding of RMSE that you can actually do for this. Is just evaluating of the fit. Okay, so let's now go into the multiple linear regression. So till now we were just looking at one particular variable, that is square foot living, and I think a lot of people had some qualms regarding that because we were looking into the other features, that is bedrooms, bathrooms, number of floors, etc. So right now we'll just go into the multiple linear regression. That is, we will be looking at, we will be taking into account all of these other features as well. And so yeah, so we are just going to be taking into account all of these features. I'm just calling these my features. So I'm just taking into account bedrooms, bathrooms, square foot living, floor. Square foot lot is just the built up area, that is like this includes the your lobby and staircase, etc. And yeah, so once again I'm going to do the same drill. I'm going to split the data into train and split population, and once again going to train the linear regression model. So once again it just took a second and done. I'm done. Like I got the fit, that is I got a good fit that can actually give me the price given these features. Now the thing is that right now we were just looking at a line, right? So line is when you have y equal to mx plus c. So x is basically just one input variable. So when you actually look at more features, you can have m1 x1 plus m2 x2 plus m3 x3, those kind of things. So yeah, so these are called weights, and weights like each and every feature has their own weights, and this is how these coefficients, so the weights are also called coefficient, they are also called importance, etc., but let's just call them weights right now. So yeah, so so this particular model will actually give a different weight for each and every feature. So, like if I were to draw an analogy between the line fit, that is the linear fit, that is y equal to mx plus c, with the multiple linear regression. In here, if when we look at the line over here, this m is not nothing but the weight given to square foot living by the model. So this particular, I can actually just call it weight one, that is square foot. And if I were to actually add some features, then it will have a corresponding weight, corresponding to it. So yeah, going ahead. So each and every, this linear regression model has already assigned a weight to each and every feature. So let's assess how that, what that feature, what those weights look like. So yeah, the model has done the weight weight assignment. So like it has already trained on itself to get the weights of each and every feature. We can go into the mathematics of linear regression later on in the longer version of this course because it's really mathematically intense. But yeah, like let's just interpret the coefficients that this model has actually given. That is the weights that the model has actually given, and what a particular value of weight actually means. So as we saw over here, the weight, let's say that is the slope. As I said, slope is synonymous with weight. So that is basically for per footage increase, per square footage increase in the value. You have $283 increase, $283 increase in price. So what do you think is the, what do you think will happen if I were to increase the number of bedrooms by one, keeping everything as the same? You have the same number of bathrooms, you have the same number of square foot living, you have the same number of floors, and I just increase the number of bedrooms by one. What do you think happens? Price drop. Yeah. So how do you say that it's a price drop? From the coefficient, can you actually say that? Yes. So the coefficient value is negative over here, and there is a negative correlation as someone pointed out. So if I were to increase the number of bedrooms in this house and keep everything as the same, so intuitively it just means that let's say you have 1500 square footage house. Earlier it was a 2-bedroom house with 2 bathrooms and just 1 floor, and I just included 1 more bedroom into that space, so it has now become a 3-bedroom house. But the thing is, the house is now more cramped. So you wouldn't actually, the value of this house is not going to be really high, right? So since it's not a spacious house anymore, the price dropped by $58,000. Okay, so what happens if I increase the bathroom by 1? What happens if I increase the number of bathrooms by 1? Yep, increases by $4,992. So is this? I think this is pretty intuitive, right? So if it is a two-bedroom house with three bathrooms, then it's well and good. You have one bathroom for each and every room, and there's one for one common, right? So yeah, $5,000 increase. I see that it's a really good deal. And what about square foot living over here in this case? If I were to increase the square footage by 1, how does the price change? Yeah, price increases by $318. Yes, exactly. So that is also in line with our assumption. And why do you think that adding a bathroom actually increases the price by around $5,000, but adding 1 square foot of living just increases it by $300? Why do you think that is the case? Yes, bathroom is more space. Exactly. So adding a bathroom means that you are adding more space, and 1 square foot living is nothing more. Like it's not a really big amount. Features and weights are the same. No, features have weights. So these coefficients are basically weights. Why addition of bedrooms reduces the price? So basically, let's say you have this house of 1500 square foot, and ideally, if you look at houses in Bangalore, a 1500 square foot house will ideally be a two-bedroom house. But now in the same space, we have actually cramped in one more bedroom. So now it is a three-bedroom house. It's not spacious anymore. It's very cramped and congested. So yeah, that's why the price decreases. Okay, so what happens when I increase 1 square foot of the lot, that is the built-up area? What happens then? Yes, the price drop is by around 37 cents. That's all. So it just means that keeping all the other values the same, the square foot living is same, number of floors the same, you're just adding some more space that you can't use. So it's just like it's a really small decrease, that is 37 cents is nothing. But yeah, it's still a decrease. It's just that you're adding some space that you can't actually use. So adding number of floors, then adding number of bathrooms will increase congestion. No, it won't. Bathroom is always a utility. So as I said, a two-bedroom house with 3 bathrooms and the same square footage will be actually more desirable than a two-bedroom house with just 2 bathrooms, because you are giving 1 bathroom to each and every room and one for utility, one common, right? So obviously that increases the utility of the house. Okay, cool. Okay, now let's go on to the to actually predicting the like evaluating this model. So what I've done here is I just took the test features, that is the test houses, and I just predicted the price. And I have plotted here the price of the predicted price. Predicted price is given in orange, and the actual price is given in blue. So based on that, I've just plotted the bar graph, like what you can see visually, like what is the difference between the actual price and the predicted price. So you can see for this house number 9, we have predicted a really high value, that is around, how much is this? $1.2 million. But instead it's actually just around $500,000. Likewise, for this house number 1, the actual value is around $1.5 million, but we have predicted it around $1.3 million. So yeah, so you can actually see that our model performs good in some cases. If I were to look at this house number 4, the difference is really small. And if I were to look at this house number 11, the difference is also again really small. But there are some cases where the predicted values are really off by a really large factor. So this can actually indicate that these houses probably might be outliers, that is really not in line with our with the trend. or it can also mean that our model isn't that good enough. So we need to add more features, or probably we need to increase the complexity of this model. Probably we need some kind of more yeah like basically more data. That is, we need to add more data regarding these similar kind of houses, etc.